an option. One other little bit of housekeeping before we dive in. We're kind of entering into our summer hibernation season at SMPS Northeast Ohio, but we do have our annual award ceremony coming up in July, on July 17th. Even if you have not submitted, it is still a great time. It'll be at Alley Cat Oyster Bar. I'm putting the info link in the chat. It's an awards ceremony, but it's also, kind of end of year party, and it's definitely worth checking out just for the fun of it, and certainly to see who else is submitting and winning, and to think to yourself, I can do better than that. So with that being said, thank you for joining us on our last learning lab of the season. And I'm Donald Butchko. I am co-chair of the committee. We also have Mary Schnell, who is on the committee, and Erica, who is our presenter and also a rising member of the Learning Lab committee. So with that being said, I will turn it over to you, Erica, and you can start sharing whenever you like.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I'm just going to get myself sharing here. All right, should be sharing. So thank you for having me. Yes, I'm a brand new member to the education committee, so I'm really excited to be here and kind of kick off the end of the year with a little talk of myself. I am the principal and co-owner of Pixel Power. We're a website design and social media marketing firm here in Cleveland. And I spent several years doing in-house marketing in a construction firm before launching my own business. So now I support marketing teams across the country with content strategy, web design, and developing marketing systems that work in the real world. Especially in atmospheres like all of yours, where you're very deadline driven, you have chaotic environments, and it's a little bit hard to keep up with all of your content creation and marketing around the many things that come up on a day-to-day basis. So today's session is going to be about creating a system to help you stay visible and consistent with your content. Since I know that you're being pulled in a dozen different directions or covering multiple roles oftentimes, I want to let you know how my team has figured out what steps to go through to make it as strategic as possible when you're developing content, and you automate all of these things so that you're not trying to onesie twosie tasks as you think about them, rather planning them in advance. So that's my goal for today. I know most of you, you're not new to this. You're all in some kind of marketing or business development role, and you're often working with lean teams, unless you're from a very large company that's really invested in their marketing team. When I worked in a construction firm, there were only two of us doing any kind of marketing, and one person was wholly devoted to proposals. And so it was really on me to make sure that I did all of the content preparation and strategy, and that meant the planning and implementation of all of it. So I want to kind of share with you what I've figured out is the best solution for making sure all of this stuff gets done. This is our 5-part marketing workflow: planning, project management, writing text and visual design, and then scheduling. There is a purpose for putting them in this order. And I will say that you cannot do the prior thing you cannot do number 2 without doing number 1. Planning is the most essential portion of planning out your marketing strategy and your content in advance. I can't tell you how many business owners, marketing directors I work with that just completely skip the planning stage. It's very much a commonplace to think like, oh, we haven't put out a social media post in a while, let's make something, and then you just put it up immediately. And what we try to do with a planning stage is avoid those last minute decision making um, items that aren't cohesive with all the rest of your last minute decision making items. So if we actually plan things out in advance, we try to make sure that all of the content works together in a cohesive way and makes sense to your audience. I like to look at this like uh, it's part of the overall company's goals in their strategic plan. I will say that when I first got into marketing, I was very far removed from knowing anything about what it was that the company was trying to accomplish. I was sort of in my own little world, responsible for making sure that the social media pages were full of posts, and I wrote blogs and focused on search engine optimization at that time. But I didn't really know what it was that the salespeople were going after, what it was that the C-suite was focused on. It was just sort of like, oh, we know we need marketing, and so we hired this person to do it, and she sits in this cubicle and she just handles it. And so I was very far removed from their strategic plan as an organization. And what I want to encourage you to do is, if you found yourself in that situation, to try to get some insights on those things. Maybe there are some meetings that you can attend so that you know what sorts of things they're going after. And that way you can better develop what your goals are with your marketing. So there are many different things that you can decide that you want to go after in marketing. A couple of examples I put on this page are, you might want to gain 500 Instagram followers in 2 months. That might be totally not at all what your goals are as a company. So kind of knowing what the overall strategic plan is and how you can help support that and drive um, those efforts is always going to help you. It's going to make you shine, and it's going to help your company overall. So this is how you turn your broad business goals into something tangible. Instead of raising awareness, your SMART goal might be to grow LinkedIn followers. Actually, I sort of skipped the SMART goal thing. So if I skip back here, I outlined these things called SMART goals, and these are just the first letters of all of these words here. Be specific about what your focus is going to be. So once you do come up with, let's say you were doing a recruiting push, maybe you have I have one customer, for instance, who has a lot of people retiring in the next few years. And so they're doing a major recruiting push. So if we want to focus all of our content around recruiting, that is the clear and narrow focus for that specific goal that we're going to be going after. We're going to start to track progress with data. How many people have we gotten to be interested in having an informational interview, for instance? How many people came to our booth and who we got information from, their contact info at career fairs, for instance? And making sure that we are having achievable, realistic goals and keeping track of all of those things. We want to make sure, of course, that this recruiting, with my example, is relevant to the business priorities. Since they're looking to replace their retiring workforce, this is very relevant for us to do a recruiting campaign for them. And having deadlines. We know that we want a certain amount of overlap between the new recruits and the retiring workforce. And so we need to have specific deadline-driven timelines where we make sure that those incomers, they have a certain amount of overlap with the really experienced people, so that they're not just in a sink or swim situation, but they're really learning the business when they come in. So that's a great real life example of something I've been working on recently. In the AEC world, it might be something like recruiting. It might be something like you have new sustainability initiatives. Maybe you're doing something in construction where you're going after energy efficiency projects and you want to attract customers that are highly interested in sustainability focus, or doing some kind of solar or geothermal projects. So you may decide to focus on other similar projects that you've implemented, and do a whole campaign surrounding those things if you want to attract other people to those kinds of works that you do. So making sure that you know that overall strategy really helps you to decide what kind of content exactly you're going to be putting out on all of the various platforms where you speak to your audience. Once you have those clear goals, this strategy is how you reach them. So key questions are, who are you talking to? Where are they? And where do you want to be known? If you're thinking, okay, the recruiting example, where are we going to find these less seasoned workers who are going to come in? Are we going to find these people on a Facebook page? Not likely. We need to go where they are. So Instagram, TikTok is a big thing for that particular initiative that I talked about. But you might have your audience is more heavily investing their time on LinkedIn, for instance. And actually, even the younger crowd, they're starting to catch on to LinkedIn, but I feel like it has a little bit of a ways to go with the college kids in particular. But just thinking about what your goals are and how you're actually going to reach those people that you need to reach in order to accomplish them is a really important part of your planning for your content. The channels that you use are not just for social media, of course. You want to think about email newsletters for your clients, other ways that you reach people, whether it's trade shows and conferences, places where you're reaching out to people on a regular basis, all have to be part of your content strategy so that you have all of those pieces and parts related to each other. One example I can give is we were doing a campaign for an organization that, they were all on board. We had the newsletters, we had webinars, social posts, all of that. What they had not done was inform their receptionist what to do with a call that came in about this particular thing that we were pushing. And so kind of making sure that all of the people within the company are getting the communication. If they're going to be part of this process, they need to know about it. They need to know what it is you're promoting, what the goal is, where they're supposed to send that call. I've had similar things happen where a company website will have a chat window, and the person who monitored the chat window had no idea that there was this campaign going on and what to do with inquiries about these things. So if you look at your content plan as not just writing content, but also how is it that you talk to people in every fashion, in every way, and making sure that they're part of your content plan, that's super important for cohesiveness. This is a very simplistic but easy to read content calendar I threw together just to show you how you might start to strategize where your content's going to go. So in this case, I started off with the first thing being to publish a blog. And the reason I did that is that I like to anchor a time period around a certain piece of content that is long form. So that may be a blog post, a case study, white paper, something of that nature, where you're going to make that available to people, but then you're going to take snippets of that thing and sprinkle it out. We call that a drip campaign, over several posts over a time period in all of these different platforms. So sure, you've got this blog posted, but the question is, just because it's there, does that mean anyone's going to see it? Well, no, because people aren't generally just visiting your website to see if you happen to have a new blog post. You have to actually distribute that out in all of the different ways that you communicate with people. So here I marked off that we would include a teaser of the blog that would link people there. We would include it later in the monthly newsletter and create different social media posts on LinkedIn and Instagram were my choices for this particular example. But you may also think about things like, where are you going in person, where you can have something that is informational that might drive people to that blog. If one of your goals as an organization is to drive more website traffic, for instance, you can distribute information on paper, print old-fashioned marketing material, printed material with QR codes will help you to drive that traffic. If you have something very valuable, maybe you have a postcard about this very valuable blog or white paper, and you have the postcard on your table when you're working at a conference somewhere, and it has a QR code saying like, hey, go and grab this thing. It'll really help you with thus and such topic. That will help you to drive your web traffic. And you're getting people to move from an in-person, talking face-to-face or paper material to digital, and that's what you want. And that is actually a great way for you to be able to track that conversion. So you can see then if you use a particular link that wow, by pushing it this way, by going to this conference or doing this thing, we were able to then track that we upped our website traffic during this time period by doing this thing. But all of this takes planning in advance, because if you don't have the thought process of, okay, we're going to write this blog, but then what are we going to do with it? Why are we writing this blog? What is the purpose of it? And then how are we going to make that purpose happen? Then you wouldn't have thought, oh, I need to get this blog posted. I need to get it up on the newsletter, social media. I need to create a postcard. I need to have it printed and ready to go for whoever's working the conference to go out. And so all of that takes planning in advance, rather than just, we'll throw up a blog today and send it out on social and hope it gains some traction. It's one of those things where we want to be able to reuse and repurpose content and track that content in as many ways as we can, rather than just pumping out continuous content that stands alone. So that's a really good example of how to use this content calendar. So once you get everything all planned out and you have, all of the platforms ready in front of you and a real strategic intentionality about it, that's when you have to start managing the project. So at this point in the game, you've not actually written anything, you've not created graphics, you just have a plan for it and what it is that you want to accomplish. This also is an area where I highly recommend a project management tool, or at least a spreadsheet where you can keep track of what the actual tasks are that you need to accomplish in order to implement that plan, that strategic plan that you just created. For me, I have two women in particular who work for me. One of them is really fantastic at writing, and the other one is graphics. And so they each have their own responsibilities when I'm trying to implement a marketing plan. And I personally like to use Basecamp. I've also used Asana and Trello a little bit, but those are some very popular ones for marketers in my world. And I had never heard of any of these things when I worked in construction. So I'm never sure how things have changed, because I have been gone for a decade. But we didn't use any project management tool back then. And so I can't even imagine how much more effective and efficient I would have been had I known about these things at that time. what I really, really love about using a project management tool is that it not only makes it very clear what the tasks are that need to be completed, but it also assigns them to specific people. And you can also sync them with your calendar. So if you're someone who lives and dies by your Google Calendar, like I am, I have assignments that show up there on my Google Calendar, and I can see that things are coming up, and I need to make sure to get these things done and block time off to accomplish those tasks. And I know as an AEC marketer, you have a lot of other internal comms and proposals, things that you're working on. And so the more you can put into your project manager and better align with the time you have available to you, the more likely it is that you'll be able to implement your marketing strategy and do everything in advance so that you're not onesie-twosying, like I keep saying. This is an example of my Basecamp. I know that a couple of people in this particular group have mentioned trying out Basecamp. And a couple of things I want to mention about this is Basecamp is not a file storage system. It is a project manager. So while we can include files and links to file storage, like a Google Drive, for instance, it is really more of a place where you organize yourself and your team. So in Basecamp, and I'm not going to get too deep into this, they have a section called to-dos. And so it is a grouping of to-do lists. And I love it. I use it every single day. And it is a great way for me to put in an assignment for myself or one of my team, and I can see when they've completed that. One thing I did not take a screenshot of here is that each one of these tasks here that you can see my teammate Molly worked on this posting plan, I can discuss within each one of these tasks anything that's directly related to it with Molly. So each of these has its own thread. So that means, if I'm going to talk about, okay, we did a post about, I did a stint in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I niche in environmental or sustainability related companies. So I was sharing a little bit of something about my time working in the Cuyahoga Valley. And what is great about this is, yes, I put this in as a task for Molly to create a post about it, but then all of the notes, any tidbits that I want to give about my time there, they're within this task. And then any questions that she has, she can ask me right there, and nothing gets lost. I think that in a lot of companies that don't use a project management tool like this one, they rely heavily on email threads, which can be very confusing. They get jumbled, topics get jumbled, and it gets to be a little bit of a, digging through your email game if you need to go back and reference something. But even if you have emails and you pull them into your project manager, Molly has all the information that she needs about this post that she needed to create for me right here. And then when she took it off, she checked it off here and meant, I'm done. And so, I just recommend it so much. You can get free versions, last I checked, of Asana and Trello if you want to just try something out, if you don't already have a project manager that you use. This is really great too, because you can keep track of what your team has accomplished or hasn't. So, for instance, I had a team member who needed emergency surgery a couple years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's gone. What is going to fall through the cracks? Well, I can go into my project manager and see, what was assigned to her. And that way I can reassign it or take it on myself, make sure that it doesn't fall through the cracks just because somebody is out. So highly recommend. So the third part, after you've done your planning and then you've come up with all of your task lists and assigned them to the appropriate person, is the writing. That's when you can actually start to create content. I think I mentioned earlier that I always like to start with long form content. Sometimes that is in a written format, like the blog or article. And sometimes it is like a video, for instance. If you are building out a YouTube channel, you might be doing a little bit of longer form content. And that's a really good place to start with all the text from that or a transcript from a video. And then you can break that down into pieces. Let's say you did start with a video. So you've got this on your YouTube page, and then you want to create a blog from it for your website. Then you want to create a shorter little snippet of it for your newsletter, and then some even shorter ones for your social media. So they're all related, and they start off, since you're starting with the long form, with the heavy thing, that the thing that's the most work, and it just gets easier as you go down the line and tick off all of the items that are going to be associated around that initial long form content. And this is where AI comes in really handily. I love to use AI for breaking down long form content into short snippets. So if you say wanted to do an article about, everything you should have evaluated in regards to your building envelope, that is something that you could put together and then break out into different things. So if you want to talk about, windows or whatever it is, you can then break those out into smaller pieces of content to distribute amongst all of your different platforms. These are just some examples of something recently. I work a lot with the Small Business Development Center at Lorain County Community College, and they have ongoing events. And so because they hold events and educational sessions, they have multiple ways that they're trying to reach different people to get them to register and come. So this was a screenshot I took of an e-newsletter that went out. It was an e-blast, just trying to get people to register for this. And then this was a flyer that they did, and they also posted it on their Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn too. So it's all kind of that same information, but trying to get people in the places that they are. So this is an example that I took, I totally made this up just for this talk. If you are doing some blogging for your website, you can start with something that is 500 plus words. That's a really great place to start so that you can then have enough content to break it into smaller pieces. So here I didn't write out an entire blog, so it was just an example, but I did put together a title kind of about what we're talking about, and then a little snippet about what it's about. But then you can break that same thing into a social media post that I put together here, and also for your newsletter. One thing I've been seeing occasionally with those who are less seasoned with newsletters is they're including the entire article in the newsletter. And I want you to think about your newsletter just like social media. It is a place where you're trying to track what people are doing, what they're interested in, get them to do something. So that's where you have a call to action. Call to action is directing someone to go and do a particular thing. So for this example, we've posted a new blog. We want people to go look at it. We're trying to up our traffic on our website. And so that's why that's there, but it's the destination. And so we need to advertise that this exists. It's just like a restaurant. If you build one, but nobody knows it's there, no one's going to go eat at it. So we're going to post this blog, and then we're going to let everybody know that it exists and why it's a great thing for them to go and read. and get that out there via newsletter, social media, and any other way that you communicate with your audience. The last part of the actual design of your content is the visuals. And the reason this is because you really finagle the words in part 3. When you're doing the writing portion, you finagle those things. And so then, it's kind of like each step gets a little bit easier than the last one because you have so much more information by the time you reach I need to create pictures for this or flyers for this, whatever the case may be. But this is where people love to play in all sorts of different fantastic tools. And of course, with AI, we've got, umpteen amounts of different platforms that you can try out. I still have my team mainly use Canva. That seems to be the standard amongst us marketers who are just running marketing agencies. That's what we use. I also do a little bit of InDesign and Illustrator, but mainly those things we're using for print materials. Adobe Express is a favorite of some of the other marketers, but I will say Canva is definitely king currently. That's what people are mainly using. I have not done a heck of a lot with AI image creating. I've played with it a little bit, but I am of the mindset that authenticity is always best. And so if you're creating something that is going to be kind of a supporting image or something that's an add-on and not the main image, I'm okay with that. But something we endlessly talk about in my marketing classes, talks, anything that I go to or attend, anyone I'm talking to, we are talking only about letting people get to know us personally and our company, what the experience would be with us, who they would be working with there. They all like to say know, like, and trust. They need to know, like, and trust us in order to work with us. And I feel that if you have an over reliance on AI, they're really not getting to know you or your company or the kind of work that you do. It doesn't very well represent the experience that they would have in working with you or your team. And so I don't like to over rely anything on AI, but I think that it is a wonderful support to things, especially with writing. So I encourage its use, but not to exclusively use it as like a replacement for the work that you would have been doing. As far as the visuals go, I think that I see people fall away from their brand standards or they don't have brand standards. And that's where it kind of falls apart here, or they are not sure how to make their visuals look cohesive, or they're not sure how to make them look nice. Now I work with a lot of small business owners, and so I probably see that a little bit more than you marketers are seeing, because you all do this day in and day out. But if you don't happen to have brand guidelines, I would look up some examples of what that means, what it could mean to establish some of those things. What they are essentially are the very particular colors that you use, the fonts you use, the tone of all of your photos that you use. And that is what creates that cohesivity between all of the different graphics that you'll need for the different platforms you're using to communicate with people. This is a fake company. I just made this real quick in Canva to show how you could easily use Canva to resize an image that you've already made. So I was pretending to have Larry's Lawn Care here, and they were doing a little promotion. And the point of this really is, if you've not played in Canva, you can go ahead and make yourself a social media post. That I just made a square one, and you can say resize, give it your new dimensions, and make yourself a different a different sized graphic that matches the original one you made, so that when I send out this social post and then I send out this email, they look the same. And that's what we want. We want to make sure that when something comes across the eyes of our audience, they recognize it as us. That's why my PowerPoint looks this way. I have superheroes as my brand, and we use stars and sparkly things, and these are my colors. And so it's all cohesive, because there's no question, when this lands on someone's desk or in their email, like, this is who it's from, because they're used to seeing it again and again. So once you've reached part 5, you're ready to schedule things out. And this is where you're really going to just love getting all of this off of your plate. When you've put in the effort to really do the planning stage and then work through all of the writing and the graphic creation, and you get to the point where you can say, wow, I am ready to load this into my scheduling tool. It is a huge load off your mind, and it allows you to know that all of your content is going to be going out automatically, even as you get pulled in several different directions. I try to work at least a month ahead. 2 weeks is minimum, in my opinion. Um, I want you to kind of think about scheduling tools as being for more things than just your social media. I feel like lots of people I talk to have gotten on board with scheduling social media tools, or with using social media tools. So, they can say, like, hey, I want this post to go out July 30th at 2 p.m. They're used to doing that, but they forget about the fact that you can schedule out your newsletters, your e-blasts, your posts on your website. I am a huge fan of WordPress in particular, and that's mainly what I build in. You can schedule posts to go out into the future. Something I've been doing for a couple of clients is their membership organizations, and they do member spotlights. And so what I do is I interview several people in a row, and then we do a blog about each of these people, and then I just schedule them to go out automatically. So that means for the next quarter, they are all set, and no one is worrying about whether or not there's going to be a post going out, because it's taken care of. Another thing that's really nice about posts in WordPress is you can have them scheduled to disappear also. You can say, hey, we're running this campaign for this time period, and I want it to go up at this time, and I want it to go down at this time. And so that is really fantastic. You're not having to, mark on your calendar, oh, I need to go take this down after this is over, so that no one's still using it or clicking on it. You can just automate all those things, and I am all for automation. Scheduling tools are amazing. If you do not have a paid for scheduling tool, there are a couple of free things that you can check out. Probably everyone in this group is using LinkedIn, and LinkedIn does have a built-in, a native scheduling tool. So I highly recommend using that if you don't have something that's a third-party platform. And Meta Business Suite, I would think that likely most people in here at least have a Facebook page, if not an Instagram too. And you can use the Meta Business Suite to schedule those posts to go out automatically. And so for free. I'm not the biggest fan of the Meta Business Suite, just because I think it's hard to finagle sometimes, but it's not too bad. Once you get in there and you use it more regularly, it's not too bad. And if you're looking for free, it's definitely something to check out. Most of my customers are either using MailChimp or Constant Contact for their e-newsletters, and both of those platforms allow you to schedule, and actually then schedule again to send out to the people who have not opened the newsletter the first time around, and I would take advantage of those things. so that when someone comes to you and says, hey, I have an important meeting today and I forgot I need this thing, you're not thinking to yourself, oh, I meant to put out a newsletter today, I guess I'll scrap it. Because it'll be done, and so that you can handle all of those internal requests that come to you last minute, knowing that your content is not going to have a blip in the scheduling. It'll just be done. I would say that most tools have some kind of scheduling or a third-party scheduler that you can use, and I would definitely explore that if you're interested in making sure your content is consistent without having to do it yourself all the time. I would love to take any questions. If anyone has anything they would love advice on from someone who manages content on a regular basis, I'm here.
I have one.
Okay.
For what about like alt text? Is that something that should be worked out, like also along with the writing and
Yes.
such, and can that be scheduled?
Yes. So like the alt text in your social posts and your posts on your website definitely should be worked out during the writing stage. I would also use that time period to figure out what your hashtag set is going to be for that campaign that you're working on. Alt text a lot of the time is related to photos and imagery, and a lot of the scheduling tools, if you're using a third party, you can enter those right in there. I use Social Pilot for my business, and it allows me to do just that.
Hi, Erica. Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I just saw that, yes, someone asked
Sorry, we have a
about the.
question. How do you
Great.
deal with the unpredictable? Like, say you find out that, from a sales guy that doesn't talk to you often, like there's something that's you could post like that day or within 24 hours. How do you pivot and like deal with that with your scheduling?
Sure. So I don't see it as a pivot issue. What we're doing when we create a content strategy is we're making sure that everything is consistently going out and makes sense together. But that does not mean that you can't do things that are impromptu. A great example that you just gave, that happens sometimes, especially if they're out somewhere and something exciting is happening. Maybe they're at a conference and they're giving a presentation and you want to go live, or there's just something that happens impromptu. That's okay. You don't need to worry about deleting anything out of your already scheduled content. It's just an add-on.
Are there any issues with actually with doubling up on content in a day? I've heard
No.
that it's not too great to do that, like on LinkedIn, 2 posts in a day, or
No, not at all. The more you can be seen, the better, honestly. You will always get naysayers or people who, don't like that or something. But what you really need to be more consistent and have a well-rounded content plan. So if you're putting out, 4 posts in a day that are all sales posts, that's going to turn people off for sure. But if you're putting out a great article you wrote, hey, make sure to check us out here. Here's a great testimonial we just got. So exciting. And then you put out a video of something that's happening in the office. Those are not going to turn anyone off or have any problems for you whatsoever. I think that, a good way of looking at it is like dropping a paper boat in a creek. If you weren't standing there to see the paper boat, well, there needs to be another one in order for you to see a paper boat. So a lot of people are going to miss your posts. You need to keep consistently posting on a regular basis. And no, you can't really have too much. I see someone asked if the slides will be available. I'm happy to make the slides available. Yes. This is also being recorded. Oh, Stacy said you use Trello. I'm glad you love it. Yes, I have a really good marketing friend who is obsessed with Trello. Oh, I see in the chat. Let's see. Do you and your team use time blocking for tasks? I do, actually, yes. So I have certain days. Now this is different for me, I guess, a little bit. Just because I block off certain days where I do not have client meetings, for instance. Mondays are a no-go for client meetings. I want to make sure that my team is all on the same page on Mondays, that we all know what is coming up on, this coming week, so that we've all got all our questions answered. And I don't want to be pulled in different directions when we're trying to do that internal work. I would say yes also, and with the time blocking for certain types of tasks. One of the reasons why this particular method that I went through works so well is that if you time block for writing in particular, and then a different time block for graphics creation, this is extremely helpful because of task switching issues. So your brain takes some time to switch to a different type of work. So if you are trying to write material and then create a graphic, write material, create a graphic, your brain is having to switch into different methods of thinking for each of those tasks. So it's much better if you can come up with a certain type of work that you're doing for a time period and get that done within your time block before switching to a different type of work. As far as how long tasks should take, it really kind of depends on different people. There are, one person on my team is just the fastest writer. I, in particular, am not. I am a much more slow writer. And so it's kind of a personal thing, but I'm much faster at other things. And I would much rather do things like record a video too. So, I can't say that there's a specific length of time for certain tasks that would work for everyone. You're welcome. Does anyone else have any questions?
So if you're kind of always, doing everything like a couple weeks ahead, but then you also have, like in your case, you're like doing it for multiple clients. Like, I guess how are you like checking or like verifying that these things are actually like going out, or do you just believe?
Right. Well, it's the same thing as you guys who have teams and the people who've hired you to make sure that things happen. You really need to have a good set of people under you. And sure, you do have check-in meetings with teams and make sure everything is running well. I have a once a month meeting with all of my clients. During heavier time periods, or if we're doing a certain time sensitive project, we'll meet more often than that. But we do have a regular monthly meeting just to make sure everything is going exactly how it's supposed to. I personally, since I am managing so many different social media pages in particular, I like to use my third-party scheduler for social media, which is Social Pilot. And that way I can filter. This is a different feature than I've seen from other platforms, but I can filter per customer. So I can say, hey, for this customer, just show me what's scheduled and I know that they need, 3 posts a week or 5 posts a week, whatever the case may be for them, and check in periodically. But I do very much believe in having a certain person be accountable and take the lead on a project, but also in mitigating risk. So one thing that I learned as a business owner is to make sure that multiple people within the company can do the same thing. So Molly and Eileen they each have access, they work for me, they each have access to the social media pages and the same websites and to the Basecamp task list. So just because Molly is assigned, a certain customer usually, or some of it, or a certain aspect of it, Eileen is on the project and she can see everything that's there. So she knows to keep up with making sure that everything's going out, making sure nothing falls through the cracks. And that's why we have such good team communication too, and exactly why I reserve Mondays to not have client meetings.
I have one more question.
Sure.
With everything like scheduled out, far in advance, I guess, do you ever get concerned, or do you have to be aware of, like, if you're being like, oh, if like some sort of like external event makes like what you scheduled a month ago inappropriate or
Okay.
something?
Sure. I would say the majority of the content we put out doesn't have that issue, but I know what you mean. If it is something that can be controversial or was in one moment and not the next, it suddenly became controversial, for instance. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's definitely good to go in and change things, tweak things, make sure it doesn't go out. I mean, that's a little bit tough. That is a rare occurrence. I would love to know if you guys have a regular like, does that happen to this group on any kind of regular basis?
I don't think so. I'm just personally paranoid.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't tend to have very controversial things, but okay, somewhat. Let's say here I have a vested interest and a personal interest in supporting environmental organizations, ones that do sustainability work. I love those. And there are times when we avoid certain topics, but there are other times when they're fully committed and it doesn't really matter. Let's say if a company wanted to talk about climate, for instance, climate change, and that of course can be controversial, but it really kind of just depends on what your company's belief is, and you would hope that that it wouldn't change or it wouldn't waffle over time with certain things that are going on in our society. And if it is something that they're going to waffle on, maybe it's not something to market for that company. Well, thank you everybody for attending. It was really great presenting to all of you, and I'm always here to answer any questions that you need or help if you need an extra pair of hands.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. I thought it sounds so easy when you say it.
I understand it's a lot of work, but I think just following a plan is always the best way to go. You're so welcome, everyone.
Excellent.
I've seen you in the
And we
chat.
will we'll get the slides out to people later this week.
Okay, sounds great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erica.
Thank you.